Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to all my friendly, funky, frigid friends. I welcome you as one of your own. I'm Jessica Levitt-Watara, and I'll be serving as worship associate today. I'm honored to serve with our called minister, Rev Lisa Doege. Our worship, religious, education, and covenant group theme for the month of January is the practice of story. Here at the UU Church of Savannah, we are working to build a diverse, multicultural, and beloved community. We celebrate the presence and participation of people of all races, genders, sexual orientations, abilities, and ethnic and national origins. We warmly welcome you, whether you're on YouTube or you're here with us on site, whoever you know yourself to be, and wherever you are on your journey. If you're visiting with us this morning, we'd love to welcome you. Our tradition is that you would introduce yourself in a microphone that Chris would bring to you, and we ask for you to do it in the microphone so our guests online can also hear who might be visiting with us. If you're ready to announce yourself as a visitor, we'd like to welcome you. If you would please raise your hand or rise, that will help us spot any visitors who are feeling brave. Okay, wonderful. We've got a few on this side we'll start with. Chris will bring you a microphone.
Hi, I'm Paula Roberts from Rochester, New York.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I'm Allison Perotti from Epsom, New Hampshire.
Welcome.
My name is Mary Hogan. I live in Elliott, Maine, but for the past 40 years, I've attended the UU Church in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Welcome. And I saw another, was there another hand here? Yes.
Hi, I'm Linda Rothbart, and we come from the Arlington, Virginia church up near Washington, D.C.
Welcome. And then I think there was one on this side and then someone in the back.
Hi, I'm Catherine Badan. I actually live here, and I've been here a few times, but I've never done this.
Welcome.
Good morning, Stacy O'Brien. This is my second winter season here, originally from Iowa.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, and I think there was one more in the back, Chris, maybe? Yes.
Oh,
Good morning. We are Ralph and Jeannie Ashmore, and this is our fourth winter coming here to the UU Church. We live on a little island called Peaks Island off the coast of Portland, Maine, and we have a Unitarian church on the island.
Oh, wonderful. Welcome. Well, it's great to have you all with us, whether this is your first time, second time, fourth time, 400th time, 4,000th time. We're just glad you're here. We do have refreshments and coffee hour after the service, so please feel free to join us in Ron Hall. To get to Ron Hall, you can either go out this door down the ramp, or you can go out the front and kind of make a little circle, follow the crowd, or ask the ushers. They can help you as well. There are 2 cards in the back of your pew they help us gather information for the good of our community. There's this Rainbow Chalice card. You can use the QR code on the back of that to sign up for our newsletter and to receive a welcome letter from our minister. Or if you'd prefer, you can do it analog, fill it out with a pencil or a pen, and throw it in the offering. The other card is the one with the red heart chalice. This is our joys and sorrows card. This is if you'd like to share a joy or sorrow either in the service or with our pastoral care committee privately. Again, either one of those, if they're filled out, can be tossed in the offering plate later in the service. Church announcements are emailed to members and friends on Tuesdays and Fridays. You can check your email for more complete details about the following. First, everyone is invited to Refugia Faith, Ecological Civilization and the Gifts of Faith Communities, a lecture by Deborah Renstra on Saturday, February 1st at 10 a.m. in the church sanctuary. Her presentation will be virtual, but will include time for audience questions and will be followed by a live local panel discussion. There'll be refreshments in Ron Hall afterwards. And see today's insert in the order of service, or the UU members Facebook page, the UU Facebook page, the UU Instagram for more details, and be sure to invite your friends. Tomorrow is MLK Day, as many of you know, and it's a big day for our church. We will be marching in the parade. We also have our trolley for those of us who are maybe not ready to march in the parade. Our number for the parade is 67 and 68. All of the floats line up on East Broad, so if you're interested in taking part in that, there is a sign-up sheet in Ron Hall. After the parade at 2 p.m., we have our We Are One concert with our UU Church Choir, the Savannah State Choir, and special guest Huxley Scott. There's also more information about that in your order of service. Would you like to know more about us, or are you possibly interested in becoming a member of our congregation? Feel free to join our All About Us UUCS class. The January class will be held on Tuesday, January 28th, from 6 to 8-ish. The class will introduce you to our congregation's history, the organizational structure, and our ministries. You'll also get to know other class members, have time to ask questions, and have a tour of our building. If you'd like to take part in this class, please email our administrator, Nancy, at admin@uusavannah.org. With the lighting of our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, we enter into sacred time. Our chalice lighter this morning is Yvette Upton. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, our chalice is symbolic of the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. Our chalice lighting words today come from the Reverend Sandra Fees. For the stories that long to be told and retold, for the stories that long to be imagined and reimagined, for the stories that long to be envisioned and celebrated, we kindle this chalice. May its flame bring the light of different truths, different paths, and different voices, all needed to cultivate a transformative story of justice, love, and beauty.
Come, you accidental pilgrims, you who find yourself on a journey of surprise and wonder. Come, you who emerge into this place as an act of liberation. Come, you who seek a life of mindfulness and a place to test your thoughts. Come, you who bring hearts of all kinds, heavy hearts, rusty hearts, hearts broken open in revelation, hearts full of love to share. Come, you who seek courage, and you who have more courage than you realize. Come, you who stand behind the curtain, gathering up the resources to claim your truth. Come, you who have been in a bubble, you who are poised for transformation. We begin our story again, gathering courage, love, mindfulness, and a sense of purpose. We gather as people of all ages, of different abilities, different backgrounds, and different perspectives. We share a commitment to encourage and challenge one another to spiritual growth. The path we all travel through this moment in history, this moment in our lives, the path sometimes chosen, sometimes stumbled upon, will ask much of us. Let us move forward with love. Let us move forward with appreciation for one another. Let us move forward knowing we are not alone. Whoever you are, whatever your gifts, you are welcome to journey in the company of this congregation. let us worship together. Please rise in spirit or in body for our opening hymn, number 118, This Little Light of Mine. It's time now for our story, and anyone who would like to see the pictures may come forward. Our story this morning is called Let the Children March. 1963, Birmingham, Alabama. I couldn't play on the same playground as the white kids. I couldn't go to their schools. I couldn't drink from their water fountains. There were so many things I couldn't do. One warm spring night, my family went to church. We weren't there to have regular services. We were there to hear Dr. King speak. We were there to plan. He wanted to raise an army of peaceful protesters to fight for freedom. His brown eyes flashing fire and love, Dr. King told us the time had come to march. If I march, Mama said, I'll lose my job, sure enough. I can't march, Daddy said, I've got a family to feed. The weight of the world rested on our parents' shoulders, but this burden, this time, didn't have to be theirs to bear. I don't have a boss to fear, my brother said, or a job to lose. We can march this time. We'll be Dr. King's army, I said. I'll be fine, Daddy, I promised. Don't worry, Mama. Dr. King didn't like children being put in harm's way. He was a daddy too, after all. But he said that though we were young, we were not too young to want our freedom. On May 2nd, a sunny Thursday, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, we all met at the church dressed in our best, feet ready. In a silence so loud that all I could hear was my racing heart, we began to walk. Hand in hand we marched, so frightened yet certain of what was right for freedom. Would I be hurt? Would we be heard? Would it all be worth it in the end? I wanted to run from the angry faces in the crowd, run from danger, run from fear. Boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, on we marched, we marched, we marched. Hate dogged my heels all that day, its yellowed canine teeth sharp, but courage walked by my side and kept me going. Disperse or you'll be jailed, the police shouted the first day. Disperse or you'll get wet, the police shouted the second day. Disperse or we'll release the dogs, the police shouted the third day. We did not disperse. We kept on marching. We wouldn't stop until things started to change. Hundreds of us went to jail on the first day and even more on the second. My turn wasn't until the third day. After I was sprayed by water stronger than anything I've ever felt, rough hands pushed me forward and I fell to my knees in the police wagon. I was going to jail. Dr. King reassured our parents, "Don't worry about your children," he said. "They're going to be all right. Don't hold them back if they want to go to jail, for they are doing a job for not only themselves, but for all of America, all of humankind." That night, crowded into a cell too small for even half the kids, we sang, "We shall overcome," "Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round," and "Freedom is coming." Our parents couldn't be there with us, but still we sang, wrapped in the proud and loving arms of our ancestors. I was still in jail, but we heard the next day and the next, more kids marched. The water hoses they used to sting us couldn't stop our fierce tide. Turn the other cheek, we had been taught. Show love where there is hate. The world watched as hate bruised us, but for 7 days we walked only in love. The jails swelled to bursting, and even President Kennedy took notice. Daddy said the president received letters and calls about us from all over the world. Our march would become a memory, a small part of a larger story, but we had been heard and the seeds of revolution were sown. 2 nights and days I stayed in jail. Some stayed even longer. When I left, I was tired and sore and my best dress was ripped, but my smile was as wide as the Mississippi River. I had made a difference. "I'm so proud of you, baby girl," Mama said. "Your march was what made them see. With nothing more than our feet, voices, and courage, we had done what others could not." Change was right around the corner. We felt it like a cool breeze in Alabama August. On May 10th, the good news rang out. Dr. King had reached an agreement with the white leaders of the city. Desegregation would begin. 1 month later, I was playing on a playground I'd never been allowed to play on before. 2 months later, my family ate at a diner we'd never been allowed to eat in before. Our march made a difference. We children led the way. Thank you for listening. We will sing you on your way.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere,
Your contributions are a tangible commitment to the mission and vision of this congregation. Each time you give, you renew this commitment. And as a result, your support is entwined with all that we believe and all that we do here together. This is its own special gift. To donate via debit or credit card, please use the QR code on the back of the service or go to uusavannah.org and click the donate button. Mailed checks are also welcomed. In this spirit of trust and generosity, we gratefully accept our offering. enter a time of sharing our joys and sorrows with each other. Today, we start off with a joy from Heather Kearns. My son was discharged from the hospital today after nearly 3 weeks, and he is recovering at home now. I appreciate the kind thoughts on his behalf. We have a sorrow for my friend Stacy Donegan. I ask for continuing prayers of comfort and peace, who lost her daughter last year due to suicide. She is still in deep grief. Thank you for your prayers of comfort. From Jane Rago, sending love to my dear friend Scott Battles, who passed away yesterday, and all he left behind. And as always, we have some joys. First from Kurt, so happy to spend my birthday with my beloved church family. Happy birthday, Kurt. And we have a joy from Lorraine as well. Thanks to the support of Rev Lisa and Judy Saucerman, I will be starting graduate school next week at the UU College of Theology in Chicago for a master's in religion. Congratulations, Lorraine. May we also keep in mind those grieving the loss of their home due to wildfires or war, those who might be celebrating their first or maybe their first year sober, the sorrow of being laid off, and the joy of finding the new perfect job. All of those experiences we come together and share as joys and sorrows. Will you join me in reading our responsive reading printed in your order of service? Sorrow is everywhere, yet joy is reborn. As we mourn together, so we celebrate together, and offer thanks that we are not alone. So may it be, now and in all the days to come.
Our choir is off this morning ahead of tomorrow's concert for which they have been preparing for so long, but that gave us an opportunity to hear our music director. Let us enter into a spirit of meditation. The words of meditation today are from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the form of a prayer that was part of a radio broadcast from Ebenezer Baptist Church in the summer of 1953. I invite you to keep in mind that date and the author of these words and listen past the gendered language and past the explicitly Christian language to hear the prayer that I think will resonate. Most gracious and all-wise God, before whose face the generations rise and fall, thou in whom we live and move and have our being, we thank thee for all of thy good and gracious gifts, for life and for health, for food and for raiment, for beauties of nature and the love of human nature. We come before thee painfully aware of our inadequacies and shortcomings. We realize that we stand surrounded with the mountains of love and we deliberately dwell in the valley of hate. We stand amid the forces of truth and deliberately lie. We are forever offered the high road, and yet we choose to travel the low road. For these sins, O God, forgive. Break the spell of that which binds our minds. Purify our hearts that we may see thee. O God, in these turbulent days when fear and doubt are mounting high, give us broad visions, penetrating eyes, and powers of endurance. Help us to work with renewed vigor for a warless world, for a better distribution of wealth, and for a brotherhood that transcends race or color. In the name and spirit of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Our first reading this morning from the poet Robert Hayden, Frederick Douglass. When it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, this beautiful and terrible thing, needful to man as air, usable as earth, when it belongs at last to all, when it is truly instinct, brain matter, diastole, systole, reflex action, when it is finally one, when it is more than the gaudy mumbo-jumbo of politicians, this man, This Douglas, this former slave, this Negro beaten to his knees, exiled, visioning a world where none is lonely, none hunted, alien. This man superb in love and logic, this man shall be remembered. Oh, not with statues' rhetoric, not with legends and poems and wreaths of bronze alone, but with the lives grown out of his life, the lives fleshing his dream of this beautiful, needful thing. And from poet Nikki Giovanni, who died so recently, Rosa Parks. This is for the Pullman porters who organized when people said they couldn't, and carried the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender to Black Americans in the South so they would know they were not alone. This is for the Pullman porters who helped Thurgood Marshall go south and come back north to fight the fight that resulted in Brown v. the Board of Education, because even though Kansas is west, and even though Topeka is the birthplace of Gwendolyn Brooks, who wrote the powerful The Chicago Defender Sends a Man to Little Rock, it was the Pullman porters who whispered to the traveling men, both the blues men and the race men, so that they both would know what was going on. This is for the Pullman porters who smiled as if they were happy and laughed like they were tickled when some folks were around, and who silently rejoiced in 1954 when the Supreme Court announced its 9-0 decision that separate is inherently unequal. This is for the Pullman porters who smiled and welcomed a 14-year-old boy onto their train in 1955. They noticed his slight limp that he tried to disguise with a doo-wop walk. They noticed his stutter and probably understood why his mother wanted him out of Chicago during the summer when school was out. 14-year-old Black boys with limps and stutters are apt to try to prove themselves in dangerous ways when mothers aren't around to look after them. So this is for the Pullman porters who looked over the 14-year-old while the train rolled the reverse of the blues highway from Chicago to St. Louis to Memphis to Mississippi. This is for the men who kept him safe. And if Emmett Till had been able to stay on a train all summer, he would have maybe grown a bit of a paunch, lost his hair, probably have worn bifocals and bounced his grandchildren on his knees, telling them about his summer riding the rails. But he had to get off the train and ended up in Money, Mississippi, and was horribly, brutally, inexcusably, and unacceptably murdered. This is for the Pullman porters who, when the sheriff was trying to get the body secretly buried, got Emmett's body on a northbound train, got his body home to Chicago, where his mother said, "I want the world to see what they did to my boy." And this is for all the mothers who cried. And this is for all the people who said never again. And this is about Rosa Parks, whose feet were not so tired. It had been, after all, an ordinary day, until the bus driver gave the opportunity to make history. This is about Mrs. Rosa Parks from Tuskegee, Alabama, who was also the field secretary of the NAACP. This is about the moment Rosa Parks shouldered her cross, put her worldly goods aside, was willing to sacrifice her life so that young man in Money, Mississippi, who had been so well protected by the Pullman porters, would not have died in vain. When Mrs. Parks said no, a passionate movement began. No longer would there be a reliance on the law. There was a higher law. When Mrs. Parks brought that light of hers to expose the evil of the system, the sun came and rested on her shoulders, bringing the heat and the light of truth. Others would follow Mrs. Park. 4 young men in Greensboro, North Carolina would also say no. Great voices would be raised, singing the praises of God and exhorting us to forgive those who trespass against us. But it was the Pullman porters who got Emmett safely to his granduncle, and it was Mrs. Rosa Parks who could not stand for that death. And in not being able to stand it, she sat back down. Here end the readings. So our hymn is number 170 in the gray hymnal if you read music, but you will also see it is on one of the inserts to your order of service, because we're going to sing it verse by verse, and the verses aren't in the order that they're in the hymnal, and there's going to be little bits of sermon in between. So we will stand and rise in body or spirit for this first verse, but all the other verses you can remain seated. Tomorrow, it hardly needs to be said again, our nation celebrates the birthday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man who would be 96 if he had not been assassinated at the age of 39, in the prime of his life and at the height of his public ministry. We will hear familiar phrases. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of a mountain of despair a stone of hope. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. I have a dream, the content of their character. We'll hear about the successes, about the Montgomery bus boycott during which he emerged as a leader and which resulted in the integration of the Montgomery buses. We'll hear about Bloody Sunday and the marches from Selma to Montgomery that led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We'll see the pictures of him and Coretta at the head of the long column of marchers. We may hear from speakers and media outlets that bother to go beyond the easy highlights about Dr. King's increasing focus on economic justice, although it was there even in that prayer from 1953. It would come up more and more near the end of his career, but as far back as 1953, a focus on economic justice. And we'll hear maybe again from those outlets that go beyond the easy highlights about his vocal opposition to the US involvement in the war in Vietnam. We'll hear these stories and others from the civil rights movement in this country in the 1950s and the 1960s, and it will all seem so long ago. Some of us were children in those years, some of us, many of you, not yet born. Here, in a new century, a new millennium, Dr. King has his federal holiday, and a memorial in Washington, D.C. And if we're weary or overwhelmed or perplexed by the intersectionality of injustices and worried about getting it wrong as white middle-class progressives, those of us who are white middle-class progressives, that is, for all these reasons, it's tempting to close our hearts or look away and say, that story's been told. That history has been written. If we weren't there in Selma, or in front of the Lincoln Monument, or at a lunch counter, or on a freedom ride, there is no place for us in the story of the pursuit of civil rights in this country. But I mentioned just a moment ago Dr. King's turn toward economic injustice and the anti-war movement. And the line I quoted earlier about injustice anywhere being a threat to justice everywhere was followed immediately in Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail with these words: "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny." And our own newly articulated Unitarian Universalist values, they're on the cover of the Order of Service, they have among them interdependence and transformation. So I am called to answer my own sermon title question, do we have a place in the story, with a firm yes. We are young and old together. Once upon a time in 1953, President Franklin Roosevelt signed into law the Social Security Act. And in 1937, the Social Security taxes were first collected, and the first one-time lump sum benefits were paid to retirees. From 1940 onward, regular monthly benefits have been made to retirees, and survivor benefits were added in 1939 and disability benefits in 1956. Once upon a time in 1965, Medicaid and Medicare were signed into law. Once upon a time in 1939, the first food stamps were issued in the United States. Over the next 86 years, food assistance programs have expanded and contracted. Eligibility requirements and program benefits have become more stringent and more generous. In fiscal year 2022, just under 60% of SNAP recipients were under the age of 18 or over the age of 59. In fiscal year 2023, the WIC, Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, served 6.6 million participants, including an estimated 39% of all infants in the United States. We can't say definitively yet what the new administration and the Republican-controlled Congress will do following tomorrow's inauguration. But we do know that in his first term, the incoming president attempted to make drastic cuts to SNAP. And we do know that House Republicans are calling for drastic cuts to Medicaid. And we do know that Project 2025 calls for cuts to all of these security net programs that protect the young, the old, and the vulnerable. And we do know that the incoming administration has close ties to the architects of that plan. We are young and old together, and we have a place in the continuing story of protecting the youngest and oldest people of our country. Once upon a time, one of the stories was of young people marching subjecting themselves to violence in jail in order to fight for civil rights and protect their parents, aunts and uncles, grandparents who would have lost jobs if they had marched. Today, the story might be about older people showing up at rallies and visiting the offices of elected officials to insist that health care and food programs for our children and youth continue to be funded and even expanded. And it might be about young working adults remembering that we all do better when we all do better, and so showing up at rallies and visiting the offices of elected officials to insist that Social Security and Medicare be protected for the senior citizens of today and for our future selves. And the story is about all of us of any age writing checks and collecting non-perishable food items and volunteering at food pantries and meal programs because the hunger gap in our nation is already too wide and likely to get wider. We need to address it on all fronts, through advocacy and mutual aid and at the ballot box whenever that is an option, because economic injustice anywhere is a threat to economic justice everywhere. We are a land of many colors. Once upon a time, European explorers, conquerors, arrived on this continent where tens of millions of Native Americans in several hundred tribes already dwelt. Once upon a time, wave after wave of European immigrants, many of our ancestors, arrived on our shores seeking economic prosperity, religious freedom, and an escape from oppression of many kinds. Once upon a time, immigrants from China built much of the infrastructure of the United States. Once upon a time, people from the African continent were kidnapped and brought to this continent as human chattel. And when enslavement was outlawed in our country, Jim Crow became the law of much of the land. Once upon a time, Japanese American citizens were gathered into internment camps, stripped of freedom, livelihood, and property. Once upon a time, and still today, immigrants from Mexico, South and Central America, as well as countries on other continents, still come to the United States seeking relief from poverty and violence, religious persecution, and oppressions of many kinds. Once upon a time, and still today, we are a land of many colors, and over again we have struggled to live into the depth and abundance of the creativity, prosperity, resilience, and culture those many colors offer us, having succumbed instead to fear of scarcity, fear of difference. The incoming administration has promised mass raids and deportations of undocumented workers beginning as early as this week and has threatened to end birthright citizenship. We have a place in the story of preserving our land of many colors as advocates, witnesses, protesters, and providers of asylum. But undocumented immigration is only one chapter in our ongoing story as a land of many colors. Education, hunger, income, incarceration rates, so many metrics reveal inequities among races in our country. And we have a place in those other chapters too. Tutoring, lobbying at the state capitol, working for police reform, running for school board. As vital as all those roles are, there is another place we must enter into the story. Another kind of witness and advocacy centered on joy and celebration of all the creativity, prosperity, resilience, food, music, and art that comes from being a land of many colors. Joy and celebration in and among and between communities will be increasingly crucial over the next 4 years. We are gay and straight together. Once upon a time, same-sex marriage was illegal. Gay bars were illegal. Gay sex was illegal. Gay men and women serving in the military of this country was illegal. Gay, lesbian, and trans existence was ignored, denied, and threatened, and if it could have been made illegal, it would have been. In late June 1969, the Stonewall Inn, a gay bar in New York City, was again raided by police, as it had been so many times before, as most gay bars in many cities had been many times before. For 5 nights, the LGBTQI community, though it wasn't known by that set of letters then, the community led by trans women of color, including Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, took to the streets, responding to the raids as an act of power and self-preservation. That response would initially be mislabeled the Stonewall Riots and later come to be known as the Stonewall Uprising. It is considered a galvanizing event for the gay rights movement. 40 years later, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell allowed gays and lesbians to serve openly in the U.S. Armed Forces. 5 years after that, with the Supreme Court's decision in Obergefell versus Hodge, same-sex marriage became legal throughout the United States. Meanwhile, once upon a time, Harvey Milk was assassinated in 1978, and in response, Holly Near wrote the hymn that we are singing this morning. Matthew Shepard was beaten, tortured, and left to die, tied to a fence in rural Wyoming in 1998, and scores, if not hundreds, of people have died at the hands of others, both before Stonewall and since, because they were gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, two-spirit, intersex. In 2024, the ACLU tracked 533 anti-LGBT bills in state legislatures across the land. So far in 2025, just 19 days into the year, that organization is already tracking 138 anti-LGBT bills. Many of these bills target trans youth, endangering their physical and mental health and threatening their very lives. Despite the historic and visible gains I mentioned above, and others, including GLBTQ people elected to public office since Harvey Milk broke that barrier, despite the gains, there is still a place for us in the story of the pursuit of recognition of the humanity of queer people, especially trans people, and in the saving of queer lives. There is a place for us in working for the defeat of anti-GLBTQI legislation, in electing queer folks to office, in providing financial and material aid to families who need to move in order to keep their queer and/or trans members safe, in protesting book bans, and I repeat, in running for school boards. in showing up as a faith community and as religious individuals, whenever and wherever queer lives are in danger, and in showing up as a faith community and as religious individuals at Pride, because again, celebration and joy are acts of resistance. We'll sing the final two verses now, justice-seeking people, gentle, loving people. Once upon a time, Frederick Douglass escaped enslavement and became a leading 19th century voice for abolition. Once upon a time, Pullman porters got a young boy safely to Mississippi and his body back home to his mother in Chicago. Once upon a time, Rosa Parks, already a trained and seasoned worker for civil rights, got on a bus and refused to give up her seat to a white passenger. Once upon a time, in 1965, James Reeb, Viola Liuzzo, and Jimmy Lee Jackson were martyred in Alabama in the fight for civil rights. Once upon a time, John Lewis, a young leader in the civil rights movement who would go on to become a U.S. congressman, was beaten on Bloody Sunday. Once upon a time, once upon lots of times, many ordinary, extraordinary people whose names are not in history books showed up for civil rights, for women's rights, for gay rights, for indigenous rights in this country. Writing and speaking, sitting in and teaching, marching and providing meals and rides. Some paid with their lives, all paid high prices for their commitment. Beaten, fired, terrorized, spat upon, jailed. Tomorrow is named for Dr. King and rightly honors his great legacy, but the story was never his alone. The justice-seeking people of our country, the gentle, loving people of our country predated him and taught him and walked alongside him in his time and have outlived him. In our time, we are called to be among the justice-seeking, gentle, loving people, individually and as a church. The story of the pursuit of civil rights, human rights, is older than our country and as vast as the entire world, though I focus today on the United States. There are so many places in that story for additional protagonists. I don't know the right and proper way for any one of us to take our place in that story. I know only that it matters that we attempt to find our place in one of the ways I've mentioned this morning or in ways I've not imagined. Because to do so is a beautiful, needful thing. And because our Unitarian Universalist values demand it of us, because our humanity demands it of us, because we are tied in a single garment of destiny. Amen. Amen. Will you please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 121, We'll Build a Land.
We're going to sing verses 1 and 3.
1 and 3. May the stories we create honor our ancestors, prove worthy of our children and our children's children, and tell of connection and compassion in this present moment. Amen.
Amen.